A Gathering of Gargoyles by Meredith and Pierce. Chapter 10, Hungerspice. When Ariel awoke, Solstar was already 2 hours into the sky, floating a half-degree above the western horizon. She felt vaguely sore, her head ached. Erin sat by the window still, looking as though she had not slept. She remembered the dark girl speaking of something hours before, of finding plums in the suzerain's garden. "I do not think I will drink wine again," said Ariel, rising. "It makes me stupid with sleep." Erin said nothing. Ariel frowned, trying to think. There was something else she was forgetting, it seemed. Some task, some purpose had put her on the road. Companions waiting for her in the woods? Odd, the memory would not come. Even now she was not very clear-headed. She remembered only hazily how they had arrived at the suzerain's villa. She sighed and shook her head, resolving to think about it later. The hours of the day-month passed. Whenever the suzerain lent Ariel his company, he questioned her incessantly about herself, her kith, and where she came, and whence she came. She had no kith, she told him, was an orphan for all she knew. She came from Terrain. But the thought of Terrain made her uneasy somehow. She turned away from it. After a time, she remembered Isterness, what the maidens had told her, and their rune. But it all seemed very distant somehow, far behind her, long ago. "I must go soon," she told the suzerain once, in the beginning, not quite sure why, but he put his hand on her arm. "Not yet. Stay a while. Piers is a small, rarely traveled land, and I get so few visitors." The suzerain showed her more of his gardens, his fountains that spouted from pools of red and golden fish. Ariel laughed and tossed them tidbits, sometimes forgetting her dust shrimp completely until the little creature tugged at her garments and pricked her through the cloth. And the suzerain showed her all the rooms of his palace, the great library with its many scrolls and books. These the suzerain unrolled or opened for her, that she might see the pictures, for she could not read. Often, by accident, while wandering the garden paths or palace halls, they happened upon the makings of a feast richly laid, but no servant near. Then the suzerain was her servitor, pouring her cup and holding the tray. Never again did she take wine from him, though, so that after a time he too drank only clear water in her presence. The thought of Irelath came to her once, he who had never walked with her, dined with her, conversed with her pleasantly, on nothing at all. In all things now the suzerain was at pains to adjust his manner to her mood. Ariel shoved memory away. Yet, somehow, always in the suzerain's company, she felt an odd distress. Something waited beyond the villa walls, and Erin did not like their host, which troubled Ariel, for she could not find in him anything to dislike. Nor could she truly enjoy the feasts he laid continually before her, for though the food was always deliciously spiced, her thoughts seemed to wander when they dined, and she found herself hungry again after only a little time. She plucked fruit in the garden then, when she was alone, only to feel oddly guilty eating anything he had not given her. The fortnight came, all day month, and now into the night she heard horns and the yelp of hounds in the woods. Somehow she saw the suzerain's young men riding out on their black horses. Sometimes she saw the suzerain's young men riding out on their black horses. "What do they hunt?" she asked the suzerain, "that they ride night and day?" The suzerain shrugged. "Nothing fine. They are huntsmen. They must hunt." But another time he said to her, "Last day month there was only one grey neat in my woods. Now my riders tell me there are 3, all different of foot and shape, but all stone grey with brass collars." Some memory twinged in Ariel, but she lost it again before she could catch it. She heard the suzerain saying to himself, "What might they be, I wonder?" And she found herself answering, "Gargoyles," without knowing why. The word meant nothing to her. The suzerain only laughed. Once he offered to take her riding with him beyond the villa grounds, but she declined, saying she had had enough of horses. It was only afterwards, when she was alone, that she realized she had refused because she would have had to lay aside her walking stick. It came to her then that ever since she had come to the suzerain's villa, she had clung to her staff as to a weapon. She had not set it from her for a moment. Walking, she carried it with her, and when she sat, she laid it across her lap. Once he had offered to take her in a little boat to an island in the largest of the fish pools, but she refused, saying she could not swim. Only now she realized, was it more because she would have not been able to take her walking stick? Through a kind of haze, she began to notice he was forever asking her to do what would cause her to lay the stick aside. He led her up narrow, precarious steps, to walk the parapet along the wall, down tangled paths in the garden, through great echoing chambers of the palace, where her staff's heel made a thunderous click. He only did so when Aaron was not with her, though. That was often now. He had begun to stand closer to her when they were alone, speak more warmly and familiarly then. At first, the dark girl had kept close beside Ariel almost all the time. Now, more and more, she slipped away. Ariel was never aware just when she went. Her going was so soft. She only realized her absence afterwards, when returning to her chamber. She found the dark girl sitting very quietly. Aaron would not say where she had been. The fortnight was only a dozen hours from daylight, Ariel realized with a start. She sat with the suzerain in one of his great halls. They had just finished a feast in which the food had been more hotly spiced than ever. Ariel had drunk half a pitcher of water to cool the burning in her throat. She felt dizzy and strangely hungry still. A servant had brought her lord a bandolin. The wood was ebony, the strings silver, the neck inlaid with ivory and shell. The suzerain sat turning it. Why do you always turn away? He asked her suddenly. Whenever we sit or speak, you will not look at me. The tone was still a hair's breadth off. In Touraine, where I came from, said Ariel, it is not custom to stare. Do I stare at you? The suzerain asked. Yes, she answered, searching for her cup. Her throat still burned. You had a bandolin with you when you came, he said. Why have I never heard you play? I play to pay my way. The clear cold water did not shake her thirst. Am I not your guest? The suzerain laughed. I will play for you then, he replied, touching the strings. Ariel shuddered. The pitch of the drone strand was still too high. The other stopped adjusting it. Ariel knew the words. The world went weary on its way, the haze hangs heavy on the sea. If only there would come a day when you would not turn from me. The cup in Ariel's fingers slipped and overturned. She had risen to her feet before she realized the suzerain stopped. What is it? He said. Ariel blinked and shook her head. She did not know what had come over her. Her limbs felt oddly hollow, light. I beg you do not play that song. The suzerain laid his bandolin aside. Forgive me, I thought to please you. No, it is not that, she heard herself saying. Such things would please me, she thought. If only this were Isternus. If you were Irilith. She glanced at the suzerain and felt herself shudder. A strange, fierce longing for Irilath overcame her. The suzerain had risen. Are you ill? Sit down, I will call my herbalists. He had taken her arm. Ariel pulled away from him awkwardly, steadied herself. She schooled her voice to stop shaking. No, I am only overtired. I must go to my chamber and rest. She left him hurriedly, almost running. He began to follow her then, seemed to think better of it. She heard him halt. Relief swept over her as she fled into the hall. He was not following. She found Aaron, sitting beside the window, toying with something in her hands. Ariel sat down heavily upon the couch. Where have you been? Aaron asked. With the suzerain, Ariel replied. She felt breathless still. Feasting? The dark girl said. Ariel nodded. Aaron looked up at last, and Ariel realized what it was she held in her hands, a disc of polished silver. The dark girl said, What is he feeding you that you are growing so thin? Ariel looked at her confused. Aaron rose and stood before her, holding the mirror that she might see herself. Ariel stared, sucked in her breath. The face before her was hollow-cheeked. She felt the bones of her ribs beneath the skin. But, she stammered, I have eaten well. And how do you feel? Aaron asked, laying the silver disc aside. Dizzy? Murmured Ariel. Starved, Aaron said. Yes, murmured Ariel. I am hungry. Strange. The dark girl fetched a bowl of bread and fruit. Eat this. But Ariel turned her face away. The fragrance of the plums sickened her. I cannot eat that. Why not? Aaron said, kneeling, refusing to take the bowl away. It is good plain fare, such as you and I both ate before we came here. Now you will eat nothing but what the suzerain serves. I cannot, Ariel said, shoving the bowl away. It has no bite to it, no savor. That's Hungerspice he has been feeding you, cried Aaron. Rashka has told me of it. It will muddle your thoughts, make you forget yourself, cause you to hunger always, and will not satisfy. Ariel stared at her. What are you talking of? Do you think I do not know you are some magical person? The dark girl said. You have told me not one whit of what errand puts you on the road or calls you in such haste, but I know it has nothing to do with that man or this place. We have been here a whole day month. Ariel glared at her, but realized with a start that she had not even thought of leaving since nightfall. What had the suzerain, what had his feasts, and his palace fountain and gardens done to her? How had she stayed so long? Magical, she murmured, finding herself angry now for no reason. Magical, what do you mean? Did you think I had not noticed? Aaron answered. Do you think he will not? She touched her wrists. No mortal carries a salve to heal all sores. It was ambergris, snapped Ariel. I have told you of that salve. You appeared out of the air to me in the orchard. I never appeared out of the air, Ariel screamed, standing up. She had never in her life felt such a sudden rush of rage. Her voice was a shriek. You were frightened and you did not see me. Ariel, said Aaron, her own voice grown suddenly quiet again. Her black eyes gazed at her. You have no shadow. You had no shadow in the orchard. That is why I took you for a sprite. Ariel stopped, panting. She swayed a little. Where she stood, her knees were weak. She tried to quiet her voice, speak steadily. What do you mean? Look, look, Aaron cried then, seizing a lamp and holding it near. Ariel looked down. No shadow lay beneath her feet. She jumped, looking behind her, all around. Every object in the room had its own shade, flickering and darting in the white lamplight. Everything but she. Ariel felt her knees begin to give. She put her hands to her face. Her whole frame shook in a passion of uncontrollable tears. Where is my shadow? She gasped. Why don't I have one? I had one when I crossed the sea of dust. Where is it gone? Aaron set the lamp upon the floor, fetched back the bowl of fruit and bread. Here, she said, eat this. Eat this before you swoon. At last, to please her, Ariel ate. The meat of the plums tasted at first immeasurably bitter in her mouth, but gradually, strangely, it washed the spice from her tongue. She began to be able to taste the fruit again, and then the bread. Her throat ceased to burn, and she was ravenous. Her whole body ached. Soon she had eaten all there was in the dark girl's bowl. Aaron said, You must talk to Rashka. He has told me something of the suzerain. But he says he must see you. Who is this Rashka? Ariel muttered, wiping her red eyes now and glancing about furtively for her shadow. The youth I met, Aaron replied. The one by the plum tree. He is the suzerain's nephew. I have told him I am not a boy, but he has warned me to let no one else discover it. It is he who suspected his uncle must be feeding you Hungerspice, but I will let him tell you himself. Aaron turned then toward the wide window overlooking the grounds. Ariel followed the line of her gaze. The foliage beyond the balcony wall had begun to tremble, as though someone below were scaling it. And we'll pause there.